There's a plan on the table right now to turn one of Africa's most famous cities into its own country. Supporters call it freedom. Critics call it something else entirely, an escape hatch for the wealthy, dressed up as democracy. Today, we're breaking down Capexit, and why, no matter how loud it gets, it isn't happening. Capexit, also called Cape Independence, is a movement pushing to break the Western Cape away from South Africa and turn it into its own country. Some versions of the plan even pull in Afrikaans-speaking parts of the Eastern and Northern Cape. Groups behind it, the Cape Independence Advocacy Group, the Capexit Party, and others, say this is simple. They want a referendum. They point to the same playbook as Brexit: let the people vote, and let the people decide. Their pitch sounds reasonable on the surface. Crime, unemployment, corruption, failing services. They argue the Western Cape would be better off cutting ties with the national government in Pretoria and running its own show, controlling its own police, its own borders, its own taxes. And they lean hard on one fact: the Western Cape is the only province in South Africa with no single racial majority. Colored, Black African, White, Afrikaans, isiXhosa, English, it's genuinely mixed. So the movement insists, we're not about race. We're about freedom. Here's where the story gets more complicated. Look past the messaging, and look at who's actually organizing, funding, and showing up for this movement, and a different picture starts to form. The loudest, best resourced voices behind Cape Independence are disproportionately white and wealthy. The geography tells the story on its own. The energy is concentrated in the Atlantic seaboard, Constantia, Stellenbosch, Paarl, not in Khayelitsha, Mitchell's Plain, Gugulethu, Delft, or Langa. Not where most of the province's black population actually lives. Critics in South African media have called this out directly, describing the push as less about better governance, and more about a wealthy minority protecting what it already has. An exit strategy, built on wealth accumulated through a deeply unequal past, designed to escape the responsibility of fixing that inequality at a national level. Formal apartheid ended in 1994. But who owns the land, the wine farms, the coastline property, the capital? That picture hasn't changed nearly as much. An independent Western Cape, on these terms, doesn't undo that. It locks it in. So could this actually happen? Here's why the honest answer is, almost certainly not. The old law that would allow a premier to call a referendum predates South Africa's current constitution. It's not even clear it still applies. And President Cyril Ramaphosa has been blunt about it: no referendum, full stop. He cited his constitutional duty to protect national unity. Even the Western Cape's own premier, Alan Wind, a Democratic Alliance premier who arguably has the most to politically gain from playing along, has refused to call one too. CIAG needs 1.6 million signatures to force the referendum conversation. Years into the campaign, they're nowhere close, growing by roughly 2% a year. The Referendum Party, created specifically to push this issue through Parliament, ended up folding into the Freedom Front Plus in 2026 instead of gaining ground. Ciag's leadership tried courting the second Trump administration for international backing, a move that drew criticism from across South Africa's political spectrum. It also came out that the group's own leader isn't even a South African citizen. Just a permanent resident. That triggered calls for deportation from multiple parties, including the ANC and the EFF. It's hard to build a country when your own leadership can't clear the citizenship bar. Say the impossible happens, a referendum passes tomorrow. The townships don't disappear. The unemployment doesn't disappear. The inequality doesn't disappear. All that changes is that the new country has zero obligation to share resources with the rest of South Africa anymore, run by a coalition that looks nothing like the population it claims to represent. None of this means the frustration is fake. Crime is real. Failing municipal services are real. Feeling ignored by a national government far away in Pretoria, that frustration is real too, and it deserves real solutions, devolved powers, better accountability, functioning local government. But the fix for bad national governance isn't giving a wealthy minority a legal excuse to wall itself off from everyone else. That's not a solution. That's a retreat. Capexit isn't becoming a country. No legal path. No numbers. No credibility on the world stage. What it has built is a well-branded name for a movement whose center of gravity looks a lot narrower and a lot wealthier than the diverse Cape it claims to speak for. It can keep dreaming. The Constitution, the President, and the numbers on the ground all say otherwise. If you found this useful, subscribe, and let me know in the comments, should the Western Cape get more devolved power without full independence? Let's talk about it below.